Good morning. Welcome to Books by Ivan. My name is Ivan and I read books. The last video covered chapter 1 through 4. This video is going to be pretty long. It should be covering chapter 5 through 10. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, make yourself comfortable. This is The River Between. Even Chucky was moved by the morning peace. It was something before he was able to speak. Do you see all this land? This country stretching beyond and joining the sky? His voice was deep and calm. Wayaki realized that it was charged with strong feelings. He whispered, "Yes. It is beautiful to the eye. It is beautiful. And young and fertile. Yes, young and fertile. All this is our land. Yes, Father. You know Gikuyu and Mumbi, father and mother of the tribe. It was as if both were in a big dream. Do you see that mountain showing through the gray mist on the horizon? Kirinyaga. Yes. The mountain of He who shines in holiness. Chege stopped but continued with his steadfast look. That is the seat of Murungu. He made Gikuyu and Mumbi. Yes, Wayaki whispered. He stood them on that mountain. He showed them all the land. Yes. Again, it was a whisper, barely audible. His father's voice had a magic spell. From that mountain, he brought them here. Chege was standing beside his son, but a few steps behind. He looked across the ridges, across the hills, gazing into space like a man in a mission, like a man in a vision. Perhaps he was looking at something hidden from Wayaki. Wayaki strained his eyes but could not see anything. Although he feared for his father, he was becoming overpowered by the words flowing from the old man. And his father spoke on, not really talking to Wayaki, but talking to himself, speaking his feelings and thoughts aloud. As her voice vibrated, Chege seemed to gain in stature and appearance, so that Wayaki thought him transfigured. It was before Agu, in the beginning of things. Murungu brought the man and woman here and again showed them the whole vastness of the land. He gave the country to them and to their children, and the children of their children. Tene na tene, world without end. Do you see here? Wayaki was not sure if the last question was addressed to him. However, he looked up and saw his father was pointing at the Mugomo tree and the mysterious bush around it. That is a blessed and secret place. There, where Mumbi Fit stood, grew up that tree. So you see, it is Camino that supported the father and mother of the tribe. From here, Murungu took them and put them under Mukurue Wagenthaga in Murunga. There our father and mother had 9 daughters who bore more children. The children spread all over the country. Some came to the ridges to keep and guard the ancient rites. The old man shifted his gaze and looked at his son. You are here. I came with you, father. Wayaki was puzzled. He was beginning to shake himself out of the power of the spell. I know, he said impatiently. You understand that Kikuyu and Mumbi set their footstep here? Yes. You descend from those few who came to the hills. There was a moment of silence between them. Wayaki did not understand. You have heard of Mugu Wakibiro? Yes. He was a seer. He saw things. The future unfolded before his eyes. Mugo was born and grew up in Camino before he went to tell people what he saw. For he saw many butterflies of many colors flying about over the land, disrupting the peace and the ordered life of the country. Then he cried out loud and said, There shall come a people with calls like butterflies. People did not believe him. Some even poured scorn at him, laughing at him, for they said, He is not well. And they would not listen to his voice, which warned them, Beware! The seer was rejected by the people of the ridges. They gave him no clothes and no food. He became bitter and hid himself, refusing to tell them more. He went beyond the hills to the world yonder, the world extent of Kikuyu land. He was not yet exhausted, and thus spoke the message even louder. Still, they laughed and poured scorn at him. Here they thought him dead. By disguise he came back here and settled. Cheke paused for a while as if to gather his breath. His eyes shone as if with inner power, and then slowly he said, We are his offspring. His blood flows in your veins. Wayaki stood as if dumb. The knowledge that he had in him, the blood of this famous seer who had been able to see the future, filled him with an acute sense of wonder. He could not speak. The only word which escaped him was Ha! His father was still speaking. He died here. Our fathers do not know where his grave is, but some say that he was carried up by Murungu. Cheke stopped and slowly turned to Wayaki. Wayaki trembled freely. I see you fear. You must learn to fight fear. Fear. It was not only Mugo whom they rejected. When I told them about Sirenia, they would not listen. For the first time, Wayaki felt really frightened. A known terror gripped him. He fought with it. No doubt you wonder why I tell you all this. Wayaki wanted to cry out. Don't tell me more. I don't want to hear more. No, 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 Father. Instead, he only whispered, Yes. You are the last in our line. Wayaki felt as if a heavy cloud was pressing down his soul. And he felt a strange sensation of suspension in his stomach. It was as if something, a presentiment, was moving toward him with all speed, and he was powerless to prevent it. Sit down, his father spoke gently. Wayaki's legs had already begun to lose strength, and he sank to the grass. You are tired, perhaps, Chege said as he moved near his son. Wayaki stopped trembling and hated himself for showing fear. Chege repeated slowly. You see, when Mugu became bitter, he refused to tell them more. Chege made another pause. His face and eyes were set as if he was trying to recall something long forgotten. He was now standing just behind Wayaki. He bent down and touched his son on the shoulder. Wayaki realized that his father's hand was trembling slightly. Chege withdrew his hand quickly and then said with a loud tremor in his voice, went on. Now listen, my son. Listen carefully, for this is the ancient prophecy. I could not do more. When the white man came and fixed himself in Sirenia, I warned all the people, but they laughed at me. Maybe I was hasty. Perhaps I was not the one Mugo often said. You could not cut the butterflies with a panga. You could not spear them until you learned and knew their ways and movement. Then you could trap. You could fight back. Before he died, he whispered to his son the prophecy, the ancient prophecy. Salvation comes from the hills, from the blood that flows in me, as if from the same tree. A son shall rise, and his duty shall be to lead and save the people. He said no more. Few knew the prophecy. Perhaps Koboni, who has betrayed the tribe, knows about it. I am old. My time is gone. Remember that you are the last in this line. Arise. Heed the prophecy. Go to the mission place. Learn all the wisdom and all the secrets of the white man. But do not follow his vice. Be true to your people and the ancient rites. Father, Wayaki called out when he had recovered from the shock. He felt weak and small. He did not know what he wanted to say. You go there, I tell you again. Learn all the wisdom of the white man. And keep on remembering, salvation shall come from the hills. A man must rise and save the people in their hour of need. He shall show them the way. he shall lead them. But they don't know me. I am a child and they rejected Mugo. Let them do what they like. A time will come, I can see it coming, when they shall cry for a savior. It was late in the day when Chege and Wayaki descended the hills. They reached home, both feeling exhausted. To Wayaki, the whole experience seemed a dream. What had he, a mere boy, to do with a savior? Was he to go about in the ridges crying, "Listen, a leader shall come from the hills to save you"? And then, for a time, he began to doubt the sanity of his father. Perhaps the whole thing had been an old man's dream. He almost laughed at the serious manner in which his father had taken it all. But there was no mirth in his heart. Instead, he felt a heaviness making him a man. In body, he was still a boy. When the time came, Wayaki vanished from the hills without the knowledge of any but his father. He went to Sirenia, where 1 term later, and almost by a miracle, he was joined by Camel and Kinuthia, his fellow herd boys. The three were destined to live and learn together under the Reverend Livingstone of Sirenia Mission, which had now grown into a big institution. Many boys from the hills and beyond, from Kiambu and Murunga, came there for a portion of the white man's magic. For many seasons they learned and worked hard. Wayaki made quick progress and impressed the white missionaries, who saw in him a possible brave Christian leader of the church. But who knew that things were changing faster than the vision of Livingstone, than the boys' expectation and imaginings? Chapter 6. Mornings were normally chilly and cold in both Camino and Mukuyu. Nyambura felt the cold bite into her skin as she sat on her already full watered barrel. She looked fixedly at her young sister, who was still in the progress of filling hers. Then she looked at the pale dark water of the river. It flowed on just as it had done for years, making incessant gurgling sound as it made its way round the projecting rocks. Nyambura was fascinated and felt attracted to the river. Her breast, glowing with pleasure, rose and fell with a sight. She felt something strange stirring in her bowel. It was an exhilaration, a feeling of acute ecstasy, almost of pain, which always came to her as she watched the snaky movement and listened to the throb of the river. The importance of Hanya could never be overestimated. Cattle, goats, and people drew their water from there. Perhaps that was why it is called Cure, and the valley of life. That is what it was, a valley of life. During the initiation ceremonies, boys and girls came to wet their bodies here on the morning of circumcision. It had long been discovered that very cold water numbed the skin, making it less painful during the operation. Nyambura thought of this and felt slightly guilty. She looked apprehensively at her sister, who was still drawing water. Nyambura wondered whether such thoughts ever came to Muthoni. She thought not and envied her. For Nyambura had learned and knew that circumcision was sinful. It was a pagan rite from which she and her sister had been saved. A daughter of God should never let even a thought of circumcision come to her mind. Girls of their age would be initiated this season. Had her father, Joshua, not been a man of God, he, no doubt, would have presented them both as candidates. Nyambura's sister. Nyambura woke up from her wicked reverie. Her sister had spoken to her. Nyambura looked at her and wondered what was worrying Muthoni. What was gnawing at the young girl's spirit? Nyambura was in no doubt that something was the matter with Muthoni. All through the week, and in fact all through the last 2 months, she has noticed something moody and restless in the young girl. This had pained Nyambura. She loved her sister. Indeed, the two were inseparable. They played and worked together. Nyambura was older, but it was not easy to tell this. Both were fairly tall and well formed, about the same height and looks, though Muthoni's skin was darker. They had the same sharp, strangely restless eyes. Their hair was thick and shiny black. It was thought, but to the eyes it looked soft and beautiful to touch. Nyambura's features seemed hard, restrained, where she was quiet. Muthoni was vicious. So it was not surprising that Nyambura should have noticed this sudden change of spirit. Coming to the river that morning, Muthoni had been more withdrawn than ever before. Nyambura was deeply disturbed because her earlier attempts to coax her to reveal her troubles had failed. But now she waited for her to continue. Muthoni was sitting on her own water barrel. "I want to tell you something," she said. "Oh, please do," Nyambura responded eagerly with curiosity. "But promise me that you will keep what I tell you to yourself." This was an appeal almost of fear. Nyambura would have laughed but for the earnestness in the voice and look of her sister. "Well, first tell me about that something," Nyambura said carelessly. She wanted to make her sister relax and soften the tense look on her face. Muthoni raised her face to Nyambura. This time the appeal was quite unmistakable. "I have thought and thought about it. I have not been able to eat or sleep properly. My thoughts terrify me, but I think now I have come to a decision." She stopped, gazing past Nyambura. She said slowly and quietly, "Nyambura, I want to be circumcised." For a second, Nyambura sat as if her thoughts, her feelings, her very being had been paralyzed. She could not speak. The announcement was so sudden and too stupefying. How could she believe what she had heard came from Muthoni's mouth? She looked at the river and the slightly swaying bulrushes lining the banks, and then beyond. Nothing moved on the huge cattle road that wound through the forest towards Camino. The yellowish streaks of morning light diffused through the forest, producing long shadows on the cattle path. The insects in the forest kept up an incessant sound which mingled with the noise of falling water further down the valley. They helped to intensify the silence created by Muthoni's statement. Circumcised? At last, Nyambura found her voice. Yes. But father would not allow it. He would be very cross with you. And how can you think of it? Nyambura could visualize Joshua's fury if he heard of this. Beside, she continued, you are a Christian. You and I are now wise in the ways of the white people. Father has been teaching us what he learned at Serenia. And you know, the missionary do not like the circumcision of girls. Father has been saying so. Beside, Jesus told us it was wrong and sinful. I know, but I want to be circumcised. Why? Nyambura asked helplessly. She knew quite well that her father would not hear of such a thing. Every man of God knew that this was a pagan rite against which, time and time again, the white missionaries had warned Joshua. Perhaps Satan had gone into Muthoni. That was how the devil worked. Nyambura tried to reason with her sister. Yes, tell me, why do you want this? You know this is the devil's work. You know how he tempts people. You and I are Christian. We were not baptized long ago. Are you not now saved from sin? Nyambura was becoming passionate. She breathed hard, and she felt a warmth inside. She was defending something. She was trying to save her sister. I know, but Muthoni paused. She had never seen her sister like that. With a light in her eyes, she felt weak in the knees and thought she was wrong. But the next moment she jumped up and rushed to her sister. She spoke earnestly and passionately. After all, she too believed in what she was going to do. Nyambura clasped her arms, and they remained locked in each other's arm. Like little children, Nyambura became alarmed at the passion in Muthoni. She spoke gently. Father and mother, look, please, I want to be a woman. I want to be a real girl, a real woman, knowing all the ways of the hill and ridges. But father, remember him. Why? Are we fools? She shook Nyambura. Father and mother are circumcised. Are they not Christian? Circumcision did not prevent them from being Christian. I too have embraced the white man's faith. However, I know it is beautiful, also beautiful to be initiated into womanhood. You learn the ways of the tribe. Yes, the white man's God does not quite satisfy me. I need something more. My life and your life are here in the hills that you and I know. She spoke now, looking beyond Nyambura as if to some other people. Then she lowered her voice and whispered secretly. Father said that at the mission there is that man, Livingstone, and many women. Those are his wives. And do you think that he is a man would marry a woman not circumcised? Surely there is no tribe that is not circumcised. Or how does a girl grow into a woman? Muthoni had now released herself from a grasp. She now stood and looked away from Nyambura. Nyambura could not say anything. She did not follow Muthoni's logic or line of thought. She had never thought so deeply about these things. She was content to follow whatever her father said was right, and she feared his anger. Muthoni turned and again held her sister, appealing with her eyes and her body. Please, sister, don't tell. Don't tell father. They both began to weep into one another. Nyambura's heart softened and she felt pity for her sister. She earnestly wished she could help her but felt her own powerlessness very acutely. How will you be initiated? Father and mother will not know, but I don't know where to go. Our aunt lives in Camino. Nimbura tried to help. Oh, yes, I thought about that. I will go to Camino and stay with her when the season comes. What else can Nimbura do? She tried again to she tried again to remonstrate with her sister without any result. In her heart, she knew that once Mathuni had resolved on something, it was difficult to make her change her mind. She had inherited this stubborn spirit from Joshua, a man who, once he made up his mind, was hard to deflect from his set purpose. Honya River flowed on. The insect went on with their incessant sound, mingling with the fall of the river. The whole scene became fearful of Nyubura, and she no longer felt excited. Even the warmth of the morning sun did not awaken her. She loved her sister and now was troubled because she did not know what would happen. They took the tin water barrels and began the slow ascent of the ridge back to their home in Mukuyu. Suddenly, Nyambura heard a slight groan from her sister. She quickly turned around. A look dismay was on Ithomi's face. Her water barrel was rolling down the slope back to the river. Nyambura and Muthomi had to go down again. A bad omen, Nyambura thought. Chapter 7. The women and men of Mukuyu were already up and about their morning chores by the time the two girls, with their water barrels weighing heavily on their backs, reached home. All along the ridge, thick blue smoke was curling upward, issuing from the scattered, mud-walled huts that made up the village. Some women, apparently not early risers, were just now going to the river to fetch water, while here and there cattle and goats, with small boars trotting after them, trailed in all directions. There was a general uniformity between all the house that scattered over this ridge. They consisted of round, thatched huts, standing in groups of 3 or 4. A natural hedge surrounded each household. Joshua's house was different. His was tin-roof rectangular building standing quite distinctly by itself on the ridge. The tin roof was already decaying and let in rain freely, so on top of the roof could be seen little scraps of sacking that covered the very bad parts. The building standing so distinctly and defiantly was perhaps the indication that the old isolation of Mukuyu from the rest of the world was being broken down. As yet it was true, no town was near. Nairobi was far, a town not known to the hills. Serenia was still the nearest missionary center, a big place with hospital and a flourishing school taking boys and girls from all over the country. But the missionary had not as yet penetrated into the hills, though they sent a number of disciples to work there. The people remained conservative, loyal to the ways of the land. Livingstone occasionally paid a visit to the hills, giving new life and energy to his various followers. His main work, however, was being carried on by Joshua. Joshua, Nubarah's father, was now a middleman and a middle-aged man who always preached his sharp ringing tone that spoke of power and knowledge. He, along with a few words, had been the first to be converted to the new faith. He was then a young man who ran from the hills and went to live with the white man in the newly established mission. He feared the revenge of the hills, the anger of his friend betrayed. In Serenia, he found sanctuary and the white man's power and magic. He learned to read and write. The new faith worked on him till it came to possess him wholly. He renounced his tried magic, power, and ritual. He turned to and felt the deep presence of the one God. He had not given the white man's power over all. He learned of Jesus. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. He realized the ignorance of his people. He felt the depth of the darkness in which they lived. He saw the muddy water through which they wade, unaware of the dirt and mud. His people worship Murungu, Mwenyenyaga, Nge. The unerring white man had called the Gikuyu god the Prince of Darkness. Isaiah, the white man's seer, had prophesied of Jesus. He had told of the coming of the Messiah. Had Mogawa Kiboro, the Gikuyu's seer, ever foretold of such Savior? No, Isaiah was great. He had told of Jesus, the Savior of the world. These strong words frightened Joshua and shook his whole body, shook him to the very roots of his being. He became baptized, and it was only then that he felt at peace and stopped trembling. He felt happiness which got sharp into him, inflaming his soul. He had escaped hell. He felt a new creature. That is always what he said at home and in church. If anybody is in Christ, behold, he is a new creature. He was washed new. He became a preacher, brave, having been freed from fear. He no longer feared Chage or what the hills and the inhabitants would say or do to him. He went back to Mukuyu and preached with the vehemence and fury that frightened even his own old listener. Few could not resist that force. Many came and some were converted, and they all together rejoiced and praised God. But some went back to drinking, to dancing, the tribal ritual, to circumcision. And Joshua day by day grew in wrath and vehemently condemned such behavior. Perhaps the word had not taken root. Joshua himself was strict and observed the word to the letter. Religious uniformity in his own home was binding. He meant to be an example to all, a bright light that would show the way, a rock on which the weak would step on their way to Christ. Joshua was sitting outside his house when the two girls came and put their water barrels down. He looked at them, at the way they were working, the way they kept together, and felt a father's pride. His house had a strong Christian foundation, and he wanted his daughter to wax strong in faith and the ways of God. Would this not prove to all what Christian home should be like? The year was unusual. The seasons were rich. Maize and beans were gathered and put aside against the uncertainties of the future. People were happy, and there was much rejoicing everywhere. The group of Christians in Mukuyu came together and gave prayers to God. The elders of Camino and all over the country of Sleeping Lions collected and gave sacrifice to Marungu under a sacred tree. All this was a prelude to many such rites which would he perform not only by Joshua's followers in preparation for Christmas, but also by the others ready for initiation ceremonies. Joshua was against such initiation rites, especially the female circumcision, which was taking on a new significance in the relation between Mukuyu and Camino. To Joshua, indulging in the ceremony was an unforgivable sin. He had not been told to take up everything and leave Egypt. He would journey courageously, a Christian soldier going on to the promised land. Nobody would deflect him from his purpose. He wanted to enter the New Jerusalem, a whole man. In fact, Joshua believed circumcision to be sinful that he devoted a prayer to asking God to forgive him for marrying a woman who had been circumcised. Sometimes, when alone with Mirianu, his wife, he would look at her and sadly remark, "I wish I had not gone through this rite." Not that Mirianu shared or cherished his sentiments, but she knew him. Joshua was such a staunch man of God and such a firm believer in the Old Testament that he will never refrain from punishing a sin, even if this meant beating his wife. He did not mind as long as he was executing God's justice. For the whole of that year, things had not gone well with Joshua. People at Camino were becoming restless and believed that it was Joshua who was responsible for the white men who these days often came to the hills. There were rumors that a government post would soon be built in Mukuyu and that the hills would be ruled from them. In his last visits, one of the white men had announced that people in this region would begin paying taxes to a government in Nairobi. People shrugged their shoulders, not knowing what tax was. Nevertheless, they blamed Joshua for this interference. Joshua did not mind this. He himself knew what a government was. Having learned about this from Livingstone, he knew it was the duty of a Christian to obey the government, giving in to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God and things that are God's. That was what he wanted every Christian to do, and was the white man not his brother? Was the white man responsible for the ills of the land? No, it was the blindness of the people. People will not walk in the light. Look now at the preparation and rituals going on all around the land. Look at the sinners moving deeper and deeper into the dirty mud of sin. Moments of great anger sometimes came to Joshua, and then he would remember he had to be patient. Prayer would soon work a miracle on the ridges. And so Joshua went on his knees. He prayed that the people should leave their ways and follow the ways of the white man. After a prayer, he would feel reassured and calmness would settle on his face. He waited for something to happen any day, but knew that he had to be patient. He sang praise, but he felt like going out with a stick, punishing these people, forcing them on their knees. Was this not what was done to those children of Israel who turned away from God, who would not be hearken to his voice? Nothing happened. Preparation for initiation went on while Joshua and his followers prepared for the birth of a Savior. Chapter 8. Sunday was always a busy day for Joshua. He conducted a long service, though Kabuni sometimes helped him. But Kabuni was much less compelling preacher than Joshua, who seemed to preach with a conviction arising from deep down in the heart. Prayer and singing followed after the service was over. Still more meeting in the ridges. Sometimes Joshua had to make journeys into the country, from ridge to ridge. One Sunday he conducted a particularly long service. When it was over, he felt exhausted. Only the week before, he had been to Serena with Kaboni to discuss the recent developments. Serena was far off, and they had made a journey on foot. Now he felt so worn out, especially after his sermon, that he did not wait for the usual prayer and singing outside the small Mukuyu church. He found his wife Mianu and went home with her. Nyabura, who never waited for the singing outside, was a few yards ahead. Muthoni was not there. They came home. She was not there either. There was nothing unusual in this. Muthoni often remained behind, chanting with the villager. Nyambura, however, knew that today she had not felt Muthoni behind, and she was surprised when she did not find her home. In the evening, Muthoni did not appear. Nyambura's heart beat fast. She became restless and walked about in front of the house, trying to sing but really watching for Muthoni. When she went back inside, her heart sank. She saw the calm face of her mother. Joshua was resting in bed. Nyambura was worried at heart and dreaded the moment when Joshua would ask for Muthoni. Joshua did not allow his children now late. He was now more strict because initiation songs were going on. He would not want his children to be contaminated by them. It was perhaps lucky that he had gone to bed earlier than usual. I wonder where Muthoni is, Nyambura asked, slightly puzzled. She was a peace-loving woman, and she never lacked necessary attention in the house. Her instruction to her children was always, "Obey your father." She did not say it harshly or with bitterness. It was an expression of faith, of belief, of a way of life. Your father says this, and she expected his children to do that. Without fuss, without resentment, she had learned the value of Christian submission, and she taught every other believer the same attitude of life. Not that she questioned life. He had given her a man, and in her own way she loved and cared for him. Her faith and belief in God were coupled with her fear of Joshua. But that was religion, and it was the way things were ordered. However, one could still tell by her eyes that this was a religion learned and accepted inside the true Kikuyu woman was sleeping. Nyambura kept quiet. She did not know what to say. Before she could make up a suitable answer, her father called out to Muthoni. He always called for Muthoni when he wanted something. Nyambura and Miriano looked at one another as if they had just discovered Muthoni was missing. Nyambura then jumped up as if going to look for Muthoni, but she only wanted to be away from his father's fury. Muthoni had not told Nyambura that she would go. She had just slipped away from the church. Nyambura, however, had not forgotten the morning scene at the river, even though it was a number of months back. When she came back into the house, she found Joshua standing and glaring at her. I tell you again, you know where your daughter is. Go, and look for her. Night was coming. Nyambura stood at the door, cowering there. The pot on 3 stones were boiling over. Miriamu went out. This is what it meant to be a mother. It meant bearing on the one's shoulders all the sins and misdeeds of the children. She went about looking in all the huts where Muthoni was likely to be. She did not find her. She came back and found Nyambura had removed the pot from the fire. Joshua and Nyambura had not exchanged a word. Joshua had not bothered to ask Nyambura for her sister whereabouts. Perhaps his anger had blinded him. He threw at Nyambura, "Did you find her?" Miriamu said nothing. "Go back and find her. She cannot sleep out." Miriam hesitated. Where was she to go? She felt that Joshua was being unreasonable, but she did not know how to tell him, not being given to arguments. For the moment, Miyamura experienced the torture of a soul torn between two loyalties with fear in front. Should she let out Methoni's secret? What if Methoni returned? But Miriam was stammering. Nimbura could bear no longer. She had tried her best to keep her unspoken promise to Methoni. Perhaps she has gone to my aunt, she timidly suggested. Better she had kept it silent. Joshua almost jumped at her. What? Your aunt? To what? Tell me once. Nimbura cowered under his outburst, but she showed hesitation, and she kept up the moment of revelation by saying, I think she has gone to my aunt at Camino. To do what? There was no help for it. She looked at the door, ready to run out as she gathered her courage to say her ominous word. Circumcision. What? To be circumcised. Before she could run out, Joshua was on her. He glared at her, shaking her all the time. He was almost mad, and small foam of saliva could be seen at the side of his mouth. How do you know? Who told you? Nyambara was beside herself with terror. She thought that the world would beat her. All of a sudden, Joshua released her. He let out a very small sigh. Nyambara detected it was pain and torment. She felt pity for him. Slowly, he went back to the fireplace and sank down on the stool. He looked like a beast of pre-experienced defeat and humiliation for the first time. He realized that he was growing old. Then, in a measure, left out what he said. For once, I give you permission to go to Camino. Go to the woman you call your aunt. Tell Methoni to come back. If she agrees, we shall forget everything. If she does not, then tell her that she ceased to be my daughter. He went back to bed. Silence fell in the house after Joshua had announced this. Miriam did not speak. She too had been shocked into silence by Methoni's action, which seemed to have no explanation and to stem from no motivation. She loved Methoni, and she did not want to lose her. She knew Joshua meant what he said. Tears began to run down her face as if they shone, lit by the dying embers in the fire. Sometimes the fire would flicker, creating distorted shadows across the mud walls. The formless shadows moved and whirled in a mocking manner. On the following day, the Emperor brought the sad news that Methoni had refused to return home. Joshua sat still as he listened to this. He already felt ashamed for being caught last night by the devil, unawares. He had now prayed, asking for strength never to be caught again in slumber, but this news was hard for him. For men who had walked in the path of righteousness, he remembered Job and thanked God. From that day, Methoni ceased to exist to him in his heart. She had brought an everlasting disgrace to him and his house, which he had meant to be an example of what a Christian home should grow into. All right, let her go back to Egypt. Yes, let her go back. He, Joshua, would travel on to the New Jerusalem. Wow, okay. She left. Oh. He's taking this whole be a man of God to the extreme. He's not being open-minded, which is one of the things that I really dislike. So, be open-minded, guys, even if your religion is strict. I'm sure your God will forgive you. Chapter 9. Harvest came and went. They had been good. People rejoiced. Such rich harvest had not been seen for years. Old men sighed with inner fear as they witnessed a hubbub of excitement throbbing through the ridges, making things tremble. Had they not seen such happening before in their days of youth? The elders then offered many burnt sacrifices to Murungu, who did not know what such unusual harvest portended. Who could not remember the great famine had swept through the hills, spreading fingers of smoke to all the land of Kikuyu. That was before the real advent of the white man. Most of the old men had then been young, but they had never forgotten the great wealth and harvest that preceded the famine. Jackie could remember it well. He and many others thought that famine could never come anymore, but he had followed in the wake of their thoughts. Jackie, together with his newly married brides and a few others, had left the hills along a secret path. His two wives did not survive the disaster. Jackie was still young. He soon found himself another bride and came back to the hills. He came back to tell the people of the white man's, but they would not listen. Even when the white men came to Serena, people would not hearken to Jackie's word. When Keboni and Joshua were converted, he broke out their former relationship. These Christians will not come to any good, he always said. He saw more than any other could see. This follower of Joshua would bring so many divisions to the land. The tribe would die. Were this Christian not now preaching against all that which was good and beautiful in the tribe? Circumcision was in the central part of the rite in the Gikuyu way of life. Who had ever heard of a girl that was not circumcised? Who could ever pay cows and goats for such girl? Certainly it will never be his son. Wayaki would never betray the tribe, his own family. Chege had little to fear. His daughters were circumcised and all of them were well married, and Wayaki, who had now been in Serenia for many years, was unlikely to be contaminated by a new cult. He was equipping himself to come and fight for the tribe, but sometimes Chege had qualms about his son. Would he ever fail the tribe? Would he ever fail the prophecy? At such time, he experienced a sensation of defeat, of despair. Then his son would come for holidays, and Chege thought he did not say much to him, because that all was well. He persevered. He knew that age was now fast telling on him, and that he had not many days to live, and he came to pin his whole faith on the young man. It was as if his life, his heart, was being carried by Wayaki, and he feared the boy might stumble. In this, Chege did not see it as a contradiction that he, the embodiment of the true Kikuyu, should have sent his son to the very missionary center whose existence he had always opposed. But does it matter? He had warned the people. They had refused to take up arms. It might even be too late now to take up arms. Luckily, there were other ways of beating the white man, for the prophecy still held good. In its fulfillment lay the hope of the people. He had learned a lesson, and he taught it to his son. It is good to be wise in the affairs of the white man. And so, Chege waited and hoped. He watched Wayaki, his progress and his behavior. He lived in the sun. If the prophecy had not been fulfilled in him, well, there was the sun. Well, what was the difference? A savior should come from the hills. Good Wayaki was the last in line of that great seer who had prophesied a black messiah from the hill. The boy was doing well at Serenia. He had early gone through the second birth, and this season he will initiate into manhood. This will help him absorb the white man's wisdom more quickly. And help the tribe. And this was what he wanted, to see Wayaki become a man before he himself died. Then he could be sure that the work he had begun, no, the work begun a long time ago by Mugo, would not perish. You could more readily trust a man than a Kihi, an circumcised boy. The sacrifices went hand in hand with preparation for the coming circumcision, Everywhere, candidates from the initiation were gathering. They went from house to house singing and dancing the ritual song, the same that had been sung for the old times when Demi were on the land. Yaki was one of the candidates. He was now a young man with strong, straight limbs. He did not like the dances very much, mainly because he could not do them as well as his fellow candidates who had been practicing them for years. After all, it was soon after his second birthday he had gone to Serenia, and he had lived there for all those years. Although he normally came home during the holidays, Wayaki was often surprised at his father, who in some ways seemed to defy age. His voice, however thin and tremulous, betrayed him. Wayaki often remembered why he was sent to Serenia. But with years, the dream had grown less vivid and less real. He saw it mainly as an illusion of an old man's dream, yet he worked hard in school. He was now in the senior class in Serenia Secondary School, and he was able to meet boys from all over Kenya. Wayaki's absence from the hills had kept him out of touch with those things that most mattered to the tribe. Besides, however much he resisted, he could not help gathering and absorbing ideas and notions that prevented him from responding spontaneously to these dances and celebrations. But he knew he had to go through the initiation, and he did not like to disappoint his father. For Wayaki knew that the old man would die in a dream of the future, which he had probably been a real essential part of his life. Not that Wayaki disliked the idea of circumcision. On the contrary, he looked forward to it. It was his boy's ambition to test his courage in ceremony. In fact, he considered Livingstone for all his learning and holiness. A little dance in attacking a custom whose real significance in the tribe he did not understand and probably never would understand. Above the beating of the drums and jingles, shouts rose from hill to keep awake those who might want to be asleep. Tonight was the eve of the initiation. It would see the biggest of all dances. Wayaki's mind was unsettled. He could remember nothing that had so shaken him since that famous journey to the sacred grove. But that was now a dream. This thing was real, was in everybody's mouth, all the time. Wayaki kept on wondering, why should she do it? And he felt desire to speak with her, to hear it from her mouth. Muthoni revolted and rung from hill to hill as if they knew were passed by the wing and drums. Her name was whispered from the heart to hearth. Wayaki had seen her the day before in a house where she had gone to dance. But then he had not believed it when one of the candidates had pinched him on the back and pointed to a young girl jumping and swinging on her lips from side to side in the midst of a group of dancing women. That is Muthoni. Which Muthoni? Joshua's daughter, of course. Joshua's daughter? Joshua's daughter! The thing seemed incredible. He had known Muthoni when she was small. He could remember the day he and Kenyutha and Kamo had made Muthoni scream with terror when they had ambushed her at Hanya. Wayaki had felt pleasure which had later turned to shame. It was no very frightening away girls, he had thought. Later, his mother had beaten him after discovering he had taken part. Fortunately, the matter was hushed up between the woman and Chege, and Joshua never came to know about it. And now, here she was. Wayaki had seen Joshua a number of times, both in Mukoyu and Israel. He had heard of his strictness in matters concerning religion, which meant all matters concerning life. How could she come here? Perhaps she had run away. Lots of girls had done it. At least that is what he had been told by both who had come from the beyond, where missions had long been established, the same that Wayaki had sought after Kinuthia. Kinuthia was a candidate for initiation. You surprised me. Kinuthia, I laughed at him. Haven't you heard she has run away? The idea that she had actually run away, actually rebelled against authority, somehow shocked him. He himself would not have dared to disobey Chege. At least he could not see himself doing so. So tonight, Wayaki knew that Mathoni had always. So tonight, Wayaki knew that Mathoni had actually run away. Her and Livian community was going to take charge of her. In some village, people could not believe this. They said that Joshua had a hand in it, probably to appease the angry gods of the Harwich Hills. Was it not known that Joshua took beer secretly? Strangely, nobody had ever seen him drinking. But they said they knew. The dance was being held at an open air place in Camino. Whistles, horns, broken things, and anything else that was handy were taken and beaten to rhythm of the song and dance. Everybody went into frenzied excitement. Old and young women and children were all there losing themselves in the magic motion of all the dance. Men shrieked and shouted and jumped into the air as they went around the circle. For them, this was the moment, this was the time. Women stripped to the waist, with their thin breasts flapping on their chest, went around and round in big fire, swinging their hips and contorting their body in all sorts of provocative ways, but always keeping the rhythm. They were free. Age and youth had become reconciled for this one night, and you could sing about anything and talk about the hidden parts of man and woman without feeling that you had violated the otherwise strong social code that governs people's relationship, especially the relationship between young and old, man and woman. Wayaki still felt uneasy. Something inside him prevented him from losing himself in the frenzy. Was it because of Mathoni? He wondered what Livingstone would say now if he found him, and so chaos created by locked emotion let loose, and the words spoken. Even Wayaki was slightly embarrassed by this talk forbidden things. Perhaps this was so because the mention of forbidden things at any other time was social taboo. Of course, Wayaki knew that nothing bad would happen in spite of the talk. It was actually a taboo to go with a woman on such an occasion. And then Mathoni appeared on the scene. The singing increased in volume and excitement, and she was a wonder. Where had she learned this? Wayaki wondered as he watched from the side. She danced, sang, describing love, telling a relationship between a woman and a man, scene and words of love making. The missionary in Savannah would suddenly have condemned her to eternal hell. Wayaki gazed at her. Something slightly stirred in him in the yellow light. She appeared beautiful and happy, a strange kind of elation. Somebody pulled him into the circle. It was Kinuthia. Dance, the girl shouted, pointing him along the circle and repeating some of his motion to him. At first, nothing inside him kept aloof, preventing him from fully joining the stream. Although his body moved and his mouth responded to the words, he still did not fully participate. Then from a corner of his heart, he heard his name. They were singing for him, some praising him and others making japes at him. The name was taken up by the drummers and the soloists. Frenzy and shrieks were up again, and suddenly he felt as if hands soft and strong held his soul, waited with it off. It was so strange that he felt his emotion and desire temporarily arrested. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to go back and do that again. I got completely lost. It was so strange that he felt his emotion and desire temporarily arrested in a single timeless moment, then released. Wayaki was nothing. He was free. He forgot everything. He wanted only his things now. This mad intoxication of ecstasy and pleasure. Quick waves of motion flashed through his flesh, through his being. He was given a horn. He blew it mildly. He jumped and swung his hip. He did all sort of marvel with his body. The other tried to follow him. Mathoni's secret was out. You did not have to learn. No, you just gave yourself to dream in the rhythm. Within a few seconds, he found himself face to face with Mathoni. Both had been thrown into the center, and she seemed to hold him still, not with hands, not with anything visible. It was something inside her. What was it? He could not divine what it was. Perhaps her laughter? He thought there was magic in it because it rang into his heart, a rising thing he had never felt before. And what was shining in her eyes? Was there a streak of sadness in them? For a time, Moyaki was afraid to look around. His mother was watching them. He turned to Mathoni. The magic was not there anymore. It had gone. In the next morning, Moyaki found himself wandering alone, blindly away from the crowd, wrestling with hollowness inside his stomach. He felt hurt. He had laid himself naked, exposing himself to all eyes to see. He ran into her in the darkness, fringe of the trees. She stood there, and only communication between them was quiet breathing, as if each had his own devils to wrestle. "You are a rebel," he said, almost unconsciously. "Yes, I am," Mathoni answered defiantly. "Why did you do it, Mathoni?" he asked with bitterness. "To what?" Moyaki felt foolish. The words had just formed, and he had meant to speak with her gently, coaxing the story out of her. And now he relented. He stammered with confusion. I mean, running, going away from your father." She did not answer at once. There was silence between them. They could not see each other in the darkness, but they felt each other's presence by their breathing. Then she spoke in a clear voice but slightly vibrant with sadness. "No one will understand. I say I am Christian, and my father and mother have followed the new faith. I have not run away from that, but I also want to be initiated into the ways of the tribe. How could I possibly remain as I am now? I knew that my father would not let me, and so I came." Her voice seems to change, yet she was speaking in the same tone. Moyaki, however, felt as if she had forgotten him, as if she was telling her story to the darkness. "I want to be a woman. Father and mother are circumcised, but why are they stopping me? Why do they deny me this? How could I be outside the tribe when all the girls born with me the same time have left me?" But funny words seemed to be opening a new world to Moyaki, yet he could not see it clearly. He was being carried by her voice as it vibrated. "I want to be a woman made beautiful in the tribe. A husband for my bed, children to play around the hearth." It was a dream in which he was being carried, forgetting himself and the place where he stood. He remembered such another dream long ago, but this was a different nature stirring violent and contradictory forces in him. "Yes, I want to be a woman made beautiful in the manner of the tribe." And she moved away in the dream with the dream and the darkness. Moyaki remained where he was standing, feeling slightly dizzy and numb. Gradually, he woke from his numbness. He was troubled. He walked back to the crowd, but he now knew that they would not catch him again, for he was apart from it all. That night, a feeling that he had lacked, something that he yearned for, something beyond him, came in low waves of sadness that would not let him sleep. That is a lot to take in, I admit. Wow. Okay. She wants to be circumcised and Christian, which is fine, it's fair, it's understandable. But back then, it was a taboo. So right now, she's battling a battle, choosing her happiness or her religion. But she wants to be both, and I just want them to be satisfied with whatever choice they make. With that being said, let's get into chapter 10. There was mist everywhere. It covered Camino, Mukuyu, and the other ridges in its thin white grayness. It was chilling the skin, But the Hanya River flowed on as if defying the mist. The water, however, was cold. To Oyaki, bathing so early in the morning, the water seemed to cut his skin like a sharp knife. He shivered a little as he sat naked near the banks of the river. The cold water had gone through the skin, numbing the muscle. His arms bent and the elbow rested on his knees. The palm were folded tightly into a fist, so that the knuckles of the fingers appeared like little swellings. The thumbs passed between the first and second finger and pointed upward. His penis was shrunk in size, and as Oyaki looked at it, he wondered if it really belonged to him. Oyaki was not alone. All along the banks, the other initiates sat, waiting for the surgeon. All his life, Oyaki had waited for this day, for this very opportunity to reveal his courage like a man. This had been the secret ambition of his youth, yet none of the time had come he felt afraid. He did not, however, show it. He just stared into space, fear giving him courage. His eyes were moved. He was actually saying nothing. The knife produced a thin, sharp pain as it cut through the flesh. The surgeon had done his work. Blood trickled freely onto the ground, sinking into the soil. Henceforth, a religious bond linked Oyaki to the earth. As if this blood was offering around him, women were shouting and praising him. The son of Chege had proved himself. Such praise were lavished only on the braves. Oyaki sat still after the surgeon had left him. He was now covered with a white sheet. All was well, yet the pain came and shook him to the roots. What was Methonis feeling? He wondered. He thought that if he had been in her position, he would never have brought himself into such pain. Immediately he hated himself for holding such sentiments. He was of the tribe. He had to endure its ways and be inside the secrets of the hill. His childhood days came and faded by. Many things clouded his mind. His early adventure, the years at school, the thoughts of Livingstone. What would he now think if he found Oyaki sitting there facing the river, holding his penis while blood dripping onto his fingers, falling to the ground, while the white calico sheets covered him? Oyaki wanted to laugh at the monstrous idea of Livingstone standing and watching all. A numbness was withering away. The skin alive again, pain. Oyaki could not move. The pain was eating through him. That was the gate of the mystery of the hills. And that day when Chege took him to the sacred grove appeared vividly for a second. The experience lost its clear edge. Most strange, now that old man defied time, had Oyaki understood him. Something always held Chege aloof from everything around him. Livingstone in his ways was like Chege, standing for the other side. No, confusing the two, the pain again, biting like the ants eating into the flesh. Oh, the strong waves. His mind was wandering. Still yourself, Oyaki. Keep still. A shout and cry mixing and suppressed groan of pain. Women were shouting and singing their reverie. All was over. The new generation had proved itself without a single blemish. The hospital was a small shed, a little distance from the village. The floor was hard with bumps, a thin covering grass and banana leaves. Was their bed? After 2 days, Oyaki's wound had swollen so much that he began to doubt if he would ever be well again. Perhaps he would lose his manhood. He shrugged. The other initiates were like him, and whenever the attendants came to treat them, the few initiates screamed with pain as another swollen part was pressed. The food was plentiful, but who was any to taste? They were forced to eat with teasing threats that their things would be cut. A more serious threat was that a woman, might be brought into the shed and one of the attendants would make love to her in their presence. The initiates were horrified and the attendants laughed. Everybody knew how painful the whole thing would be at the slightest provocation of that kind. The only relief was when the attendants told them stories of men and their inner secrets. At first, such stories were intolerable to Wayaki, especially as he had listened to them. It was part of their education. But after a few days, when his wound became better, he found that listening to the story with relish and enjoyment. He had a lot to learn. They are all out now? Yes, we are happy. The boys had been a credit to the hills. Pride, indeed, could be detected in Chege's voice. He had reason for this. Everywhere he went, he received compliments on the way his son had emerged from the whole experience. People were amazed that the white man's education had not softened him. He could stand the traditional ordeal without flinching. And the girls, and Ella from Kathanger asked, all? All, yes, the elder queried. He saw that Chege was hesitant. There is a girl. She is not well. Who is she, Methuni? Oh, Joshua's daughter? We heard about her. Strange case for a girl. It is strange, agreed Chege. A little silence fell between them. The sun was high up in the sky, and the two men had taken shelter under the street. Yes, it is strange, repeated Chege. All the other girls have left their wounds nearly dry scars, and she, left in there, oh no. She stayed with her aunt. Her wound, we hear, is getting bigger and worse. A father's curse. Maybe. These Christians, they will never come to any good, the elder commented slowly, shaking his head. I've always said so. You see what discord in the family does. If Joshua hadn't not sold his heart to these people, he would have been a simple case. Why? A black ram without blemish under Montgomery Street. Simple sacrifice. And all would have ended well. Yes, but now he won't agree. So obstinate he has become. I heard, encouraged by those white people. The elder stood up and took his staff. He sneezed and pulled two leaves he was carrying. He rubbed his nose. Well, I will go now with it. It is there. Go in peace. These hills from the ancient times have seen strange things. Stay well. Remain in peace. The elder went away. Chege watched him disappear. Then he stood up and looked across the valley. Through an opening in the forest, he could see various huts and laid scattered on the opposite ridge. One side of the roof of Joshua's house could be seen. Chege let out a small, enigmatic sigh and then muttered, Not well. Not well. He took the staff and began treading back to his home. He was glad that Wayaki was now a man, but still he feared for the country. Wayaki watched her. She was breathing hard. It was now a week since the others resumed their normal life. Mamathoni was still suffering. Wayaki had come to see her. How are you now? He forced himself to say, I am all right. She replied with difficulty. Her face was much darker than it had been before initiation. She was bearing it well. Wayaki admired her courage, a courage that never deserted her. They talked a little. At one time, she turned her eyes away from Wayaki and said, I wish Nyambura could come to me. It was not a complaint, it's just a wish, a longing that she hoped might be fulfilled. Why did she not come? I think my father will not allow her. Is it cruel? Wayaki said, having nothing else to say. I disobeyed him. I chose my way, and when he called me back, I refused to go. Wayaki let his eyes roll around the darkness wall under her. Black soot hung from the root ring, as if ready to fall. Mathoni's bed was made of bamboo poles tied together to make a frame. Other sticks were tied across the bedding. The bedding was grass mixed with a few pieces of sacking and banana leaves. The bed was low against the wall, just near the door. Wayaki thought, is she paying for the disobedience? He shrank to Think of this. Was everyone to pay with suffering for choosing his way, for being a rebel? And your mother? She too will not come, he will not allow her. She paused a little, and I will not want her to come. She will only cry and become sad, and I would rather bear the pain alone. When Ryaki left the hut, his mind was made up. He must see Nyobura. And that day he went to Mikuyu and strolled about, hovered around Joshua household, hoping to meet her. There was something in Muthunis that somehow called forth all his sympathy and admiration. Was he himself capable of such rebellion? But he reflected that it was only proper to disobey one's father. Perhaps Muthuni had been wrong to disobey his. Did not seem Nebuya that day. The following morning, he found her drawing water from the Hoina River. He did not know her very well, but he was struck by the resemblance between the two girls. Even her eyes had a restless but clear look noticeable in Muthoni. Wayaki did not waste words with her after greeting her. He told her about Muthoni and the condition in which she was. Nimbura was shocked and wept with bitterness. This was embarrassing for Wayaki, and he quickly excused himself. After warning her not to tell Muthoni, it was he who had been called Nyobura. Nyobura did not wait, but immediately led her water pot and went to see Muthoni. And after that first visit, she came more often. She avoided the vigilance of her father and would come to stay with Muthoni for as long as possible, chatting about numbers of irrelevant things. Sometimes tears suddenly gushed from her eyes, and she could not hold them back. Why did you do it? Why did you? She would ask. Her love for her sister mingling with bitterness. Muthoni would try to smile and say, I wanted to be a woman. One day, Nyambura, you will know. Let me never know. Let me. You two will have to make a choice one day. Oh, Muthoni, why did you? And she would not proceed. As days went by, Muthoni became worse. Wayaki, who was a frequent visitor, grew more troubled. Muthoni was wasting away so fast. Now only her eyes seemed to have any life. Something had to be done. He was not convinced that the herbs which Anne gave Muthoni could not cure her. He consulted Nyobura and agreed with him. The two approached the aunt, and Wayaki gathered enough courage to say they should go to the hospital. Where? The aunt asked, rather hopefully. Serenia Hospital. They feared as Muthoni and resisted his rejection. Nyobura beseeched her, hatred seething in her heart. She blamed her aunt for this trouble. The aunt began to give away. Who will take her? She asked Wayaki at last. Wayaki thought a little. If there is nobody to take her, I shall. I can get some helpers and come, and I know the way. It is long, but we can go. Come tomorrow. Muthoni was in a bad state only the day before. She had fallen into delirium. Laughing and crying, she would say, I am a woman now. On the day Muthoni was taken to the hospital, Nyambura broke the news to Miriama, and she and Muthoni had agreed to keep their mother ignorant for fear of bringing misery to her. But the case had reached a crisis. Miriamu broke down, weeping, and cried, Why didn't you tell me before? Oh, Muthoni. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that will be the end of today's video. I hope you guys had enjoyed and learned something. Me personally, I say that seek your own happiness. Do what is good for you. Alright? And be open-minded. With this word of advice, my name is Ivan, and this was The River in Between. And as always, have a good day and be good people. Bye.